Temitope Oluwatoye. She is an author and she's the founder of Transformational Parenting Academy, and she's the author of Parenting This in the Smart Way. And today we are going to be looking at the issue of the effect of domestic violence on children. Most oftentimes we look at domestic violence on how it affects the adult, the couples who are married. But most important thing we neglect is how does it affect the children? Because the effects, according to a report, the effect on children are so detrimental that it's something that we cannot ignore. She's going to be throwing more light into it. But first of all, before we delve into the matter of today, let me ask you first. What is driving you? What makes you to go into this? What is driving
you? What's my drive? Passion.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's passion.
Yeah, everybody has passion.
It started years back. Yeah, it started years back, I used to work, and I still work in the teens arm of my church. And I noticed the children, those teenagers do come to me. Then when they have issues in the home, their parents too would come, seek for advice, I would tell them what to do. And before you know it, I discovered I was preferring solutions to a lot of problems between parents and then teenagers, So at a point I was transferred to the children's church too. I discovered that I just had passion for this thing. I discovered a lot of parents don't even understand present parenting as it should be in the 21st century. You understand?
Yeah.
We are not racing. Most people are still parenting the way they were parenting.
Yeah.
I wanted to correct this anomaly, and that was what birthed the passion. I just told myself, this is what you know, this is what you love doing. You have been doing it offline. Why don't you bring it forward, get it to the whole world, do more, let more people know, create the awareness. And I think that's my driving force.
I will still come back to that later. So first of all, let's look at the issue of domestic violence. Many people are silent about it. Many people talked about, briefly, let's talk about the issue of domestic violence. Then before we start looking at the effect, how it affects the children. You have had experience, you are at the front line, you talk to children, you could diagnose most of the things that actually happens at home. Let's look at the issue of domestic violence. So what is your take on it?
Domestic violence is everywhere.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere. It goes unreported most of the times because it is domestic. A lot of people see it as a family issue. And when it's a family issue, you'll be like, I shouldn't expose my family to the public.
Okay, when you talk about, excuse me, let me cut you. When you say it's a family issue, in most of the civilized world, it's not treated that way.
It is not treated that way. Okay. I think in our part, Africa, when it comes to the family institution, there's always this secretive code. If I right from when you are young, your parents are telling you, oh, see, this is our family issue. When things happen, people, the family, they tend to, hide it within. They believe, okay, we shouldn't wash our dirty linen in public. I think it's a mentality in Africa.
Okay.
It is, we are developing, part of the world. Nigeria is a developing country. So in that particular area, we are still developing. In developed countries, it is treated as, a national issue.
It's a national
issue. But in Nigeria, we still see it as a family issue. And coupled with the fact that I'm a lawyer too, so I know that when it comes to laws protecting, this issue, there are very few laws. Can you see me?
I can hear you. I'm listening to you.
Yeah, we have very few laws protecting, that advocates against domestic violence in the home. Very few laws. As a matter of fact, for example, violence against children, the child protection law was recently, domesticated by some states.
Okay.
In Nigeria.
And some states are yet to domesticate it also.
And some states are yet to domesticate it. So you discover that we are just at the growth stage. We are growing. We are developing in that area. So I think that's why it's really still a family issue. Yeah.
And I pray before we develop, a lot of people would have lost their life during the process, because if you don't speak up, nobody knows how to help you. No, so now let's go straight to its effect on children. We said we're going to look at it on two dimensions, the short-term effect and the long-term effect. Let's start from the short-term effect. What are the things you look out for in children when they are in a home, in an abusive home?
All right. Well, one point I want to stress before we go into that is that it is a child that is being abused in the home or experiencing domestic violence in the home. It can be a victim of that violence, the target of that violence itself, or the child is merely witnessing it. But both of them carry the same weight. A child that is the actual victim, probably that was sexually abused or physically beaten and abused, or a child that merely witnessed the mother being abused or the father being abused, because this is another area that is not usually delved into. Most people believe men could not be abused, but it happens. Women abuse men too in some settings. So the child, that's witnessed it, and the child that was the actual victim are actually both victims of domestic violence or domestic abuse, if you want to use it that way. So that's the first point I want to make. And abuse can happen in any setting. We all know that. And I said there are 4 forms of abuse. It's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's emotional or psychological abuse. And this is the hardest to detect because it happens in the psyche of the child. It's not seen, it's really seen outside. And there's what I call child neglect and abandonment. When a child is neglected, when the emotional need is neglected, or abandonment, that is physically leaving a child, it happens everywhere. We have seen mothers drop 2 days old baby, very small babies, dump them maybe with the father that knows next to nothing about child rearing. Yeah. You understand, taking care of children and leave them. So there's abandonment. Fathers can leave their home, leave their children, and these children begin to feel, oh, something is wrong with me. It was when I was giving birth to that my father left, then something is definitely wrong with me. And they begin to internalize this pain, and that is where problem starts. So looking at the short-term effects of domestic violence, in fact, the short-term and the long-term effects are so intertwined. Okay. Because when you say short-term effect, when it starts now, short-term, it goes over and over, it develops, is what's developed into the long-term, if not nipped in the bud. You understand? If the person is not properly taken care of. So short-term effects and long-term effects are actually intertwined. Now, talking about effects of domestic violence, let me start with babies in the womb. Domestic violence affects babies in the womb.
Seriously?
Babies in utero. There is physical, okay, for example, when there's a physical abuse of the mother of a child or a pregnant woman, it can affect the child. Of course, we know when you mistakenly punch a pregnant woman's tummy, the baby may have defects, birth defects, the baby may die. And research has actually shown that children that are exposed to domestic violence by mere listening, children can actually hear in the womb. Yeah. And that's why they tell, as a pregnant mom, they tell you speak to your child in the womb that they can hear. They recognize a mom's voice in the womb. So when they hear noises, shoutings, recurring over time, there's evidence, there's research has shown that it actually affects the development of their brain. It affects the development of their brain. There's a part of the brain called the hippocampus. Hippocampus, which is the learning and memory formation part of the brain. Research has shown that it is affected, domestic violence affects it. And how does it affect it? It stunts its development. It doesn't grow well. And when they're eventually birthed, if a brain imaging is done, it was discovered that the brain of children in the womb that experience that their parents that the mom was abused in any way, that their brains, the hippocampus is usually smaller in size. That means their capacity for learning and memorization is actually hampered. A lot of people don't know. So it affects babies in the womb too. It affects them when they come, newborn babies. Another way it affects new babies in the womb is when their parents, as some parents, some mothers experiencing domestic violence, we want to go into look for some coping mechanisms. They want to drink alcohol, smoke, do drugs, just to be able to cope with whatever is going on around them. And you know what happens? You know the effect of too much alcohol, doing drugs when a woman is pregnant. So that is for babies in the womb. Now, for infants, now they are here, infants probably between age of 6 months before they are 2 years, domestic violence affects them. If they are the actual victim of the violence, for example, a child that is shaking, maybe while the father is abusing the mom and angrily the child is carried up and shaking. I've seen fathers out of anger. At that moment is the moment of anger.
Yeah.
Most times the perpetrator doesn't know what they are doing at that point. They are really angry. They don't know what they are doing. They don't have a grasp on their emotions again. So they can carry a baby and shake violently. Research has shown that this has damaged a lot of babies' brain structure. There's a lot of brain damage being done. It may not manifest at that point.
Yeah.
When the baby grows, that's why I said the short-term and long-term effects are intertwined. As the baby grows, you start noticing some defects. You start noticing some defects in their cognitive abilities. Their cognitive skills are being hampered in one way or the other. There may be developmental delay. You just notice a child is not growing well. Most people will not be able to trace it back to what has happened in the past. A child starts having seizures, because when you violently shake a child, there's something happens in the brain. It can lead to seizures. There could be paralysis, there could be blindness, it can even lead to death. In some extreme cases, it can lead to death. So it affects babies and infants too. 3, it affects toddlers. Now, for babies and infants, those that witness it, there's difficulty developing attachment with the caregivers. Okay, I told you there are 2 sets of the victims. Is either the actual victims or those that witness. Now, some parents can say, okay, my child was locked up in the room. The child didn't know what was happening. But the truth is that children they are so sensitive that they can even pick tension and fear in the home. When the environment is insecure, you don't need to tell them. They don't even need to see it. When there is no love connection between the dad and the mom, the children can actually pick it. They sense it. They sense tension. They sense fear. And what does this do? It sends a signal to their psyche that, see, this is an insecure environment. It's unconscious for them. They begin to feel, they start feeling insecure in their environment. There's a feeling of insecurity. And before you know it, anxiety sets in. And once anxiety sets in, as they grow, anxiety leads to a lot of mental health problems, a lot of, it can lead to depression. The child starts feeling suicidal when they reach their teenage. We have had, in fact, over on the internet for last year, I think I heard about 5 cases of teenagers that committed suicide. And I told people that care to listen to me, I said, it didn't just start there. Something went wrong. If you can remember a viral video of a mom that was crying on the internet, that the child just came home, when you get to a point that your child cannot confide in you, whatever is going on emotionally in the child's, brain, then there has been a great disconnect that was not attended to right from. The disconnect will not start in a day. It started right from when the child was a baby or so, from infancy. So it also happens to toddlers. The short-term and long-term effect of domestic violence in toddlers, there's poor health. It affects their health. Poor sleeping habits, excessive screaming. A mother reached out to me one time that the child was always cranky and crying. I gave her some tips. Check the diapers. I hope you're always checking the diapers. I hope the child sleeps well. I hope this. It was later that we traced it to the fact that whatever was happening, I just had that, inclination to ask her, how is your husband? Does he beat you? He said, occasionally they have this. I said, that might be what may be affecting your child. That when they know the child, when they get to church, the child will just be cranky. She will do everything. People will tell her to remove the child's clothes. She will remove the clothes, bathe the baby. The baby still cries. That she's sick and tired of the cry. I said, see, you have tried everything physically possible. Why don't you check out the emotional life of this child? Something is wrong with this child. You are feeding this child well, something is wrong. The child is just naturally cranky. And when it was traced back, they discovered that the home, something was happening in the home front. The father wasn't available, and anytime he is available, it was always arguments and fights and, you know, violence between the mother and the man. So when a child is cranky, the victim of domestic violence can always, you see them always throwing tantrums. It is part of their coping mechanisms. You understand? They feel helpless, and that is the only way they can communicate their helplessness. And mind you, okay, you want to ask a question?
No. I'm following. Yeah, right. Yes, please.
All right. Mind you, toddlers, their brain development is still, well, they are still developing. Their emotional management capability is still low compared to that of an adult. And that is why when it comes to anger management, you know, they are very low at that, they score very low at that. And the only way to communicate what is going on in the mind of it, in the psyche of a toddler, is through tantrums. So when they are psychologically insecure or emotionally insecure, they don't know how to put it into words. They express it by their tantrums and their regular meltdowns. You see a child every time always angry, throw himself on the floor. And the mother would not know. The next thing is, this child is very stubborn. If our people around you, you know, societal court of justice, they have a way, they will tell you, you're not raising this child very well. They beat this child. When you beat her, the child will not do that again. But is that the solution? Have you looked into what could be the cause of this? So it could be domestic violence, yes. And for preschoolers, that is between the ages of 2 to like 4, some of them will start relapsing. They start doing things that they had stopped doing when they were younger. A child may start bedwetting as a result of, a child that has stopped bedwetting when he was younger can actually start bedwetting, and the parents will start wondering, I thought you had outgrown this. Why are you still doing this? Some of them will start terming it as spiritual. Some of them will start beating the child, not knowing that they are actually the root cause of this. A child that has stopped from sucking can start from sucking. You know, they start displaying anger and angry outbursts, regular angry outbursts. You know, they start displaying it, and most times it affects their relationship with people outside. I'm talking of preschoolers now. It is that bad. It affects their relationship. Most times they go to school, they want to stay alone. Most of them are bullies because they see people around them, their mom or their dad being bullied. They too, remember, like I always say on my page, I said, children learn a lot from you. They learn more by what you do than by what you say. So if either of the spouses are bullying each other at home, your child will pick it and see it as a normal way of life. And the first place to express it is over somebody that is powerless, and most times it's their peers.
Yeah.
Probably the gentle one in the class, you know, they start picking on them, they start physically bullying them, emotionally bullying them. So you see these children turn out to become bullies. They may be so aggressive. They fight. They can fight their caregivers. They can fight their teachers. They fight their parents. As small as that. As small as between the ages of 4 to 6. Now, talking about school-age children, probably from 6 to like 10, or to like, let's say to like preteens, from like 6 to 12. You know, at that point, they are growing. They are gradually learning how to manage their emotions. But what happens to victims of domestic violence is that boys most time tend to externalize this pain. Most times girls internalize the pain. Boys externalize it by acting it out. They can become bullies, you know, being naughty. They express this pain through aggression. It can be so aggressive and naughty, become bullies. Some of them they join cults, you know, just to feel powerful. Because in the home front, there's a feeling of helplessness. There's a feeling of being powerless. So they can compromise their family values, join a cult just for them to feel powerful.
Now, let me cut you short. We'll still go back to what you're saying. Because most of the time, I ask myself, why do people join cults? Despite that, the consequences in cultism, activities, and now you just pinpoint the reason because they want to feel belong, they want to feel power, they want to show that they are important, they want to, they want to exercise an authority that they weren't given at home. Is that the direction you are driving to?
Exactly. Yes, so they join, they join bad groups, they join cults, they become cultists, just because, cultism promises you power.
Yeah.
But the wrong way. The wrong way. Power is being expressed the wrong way and illegally. So when you feel, okay, in the home front, I can't talk, I can't express myself. But when I'm here, I can talk. I feel on top of the world. Nobody's harassing me. Yes, I'm a man. Nobody's scaring me. Nobody scares me. I'm the one scaring people. People are afraid of me, They feel that's the way to go. And that is why most times, notice children, those that become cultists in the school, 90% of them trace back to their homes are victims of domestic violence or victims of broken homes, probably domestic violence that actually led to the home being broken. You rarely find a child, of course, it happens, it exists. There are children from healthy families, you understand, but the percentage is lower compared to children from the broken homes or children that have experienced domestic violence. Now, for school-age children, some of them, like I said, the girls begin to internalize it. They become physically withdrawn, emotionally withdrawn. They become anxious. They become depressed. I've had to deal with one case of a girl, a neighbor, actually. The mom told me that suddenly she just confided in me that she doesn't know what is wrong with her daughter. My daughter's hand is just shaking. That they just noticed that when she holds things, her hands will just be shaking. So she was scared. She took her to the hospital. And at the hospital, they said they checked her. They said nothing was wrong with her. So the doctor now told them, after a series of questioning the girl, the doctor told the mom she's passing through anxiety. The mom was like, which one is anxiety? Which one is anxiety? What is making her anxious? She's in a boarding school. I give her everything she needs. Why is she anxious? My brother, the truth is that when it was traced back, she's actually a single mom. She left her husband like 5 years ago. But this child, while she was with her husband, right from when the baby was in the womb, and she, and the baby was, I think the child was like 10 years when they left. As at the time the child had this anxiety issue, she was around 15. So that means she internalized everything that happened between when she was 1 year old to when she was 10-year-old. Nobody knew what was going on in her system, but she had already internalized the pain only for it to start affecting her. It started manifesting when she was 15 years. Can you believe that? When she was 15 years. So it started manifesting physically. So when it was traced back, we discovered that she actually experienced the dad would beat the mom, sexually abuse her. She saw a lot of things. And it was traced back to that. And, with the right therapy and everything, she was able to, at least it subsided. She still experiences it now, but it has subsided a great deal. So they can have somatic symptoms. Yes, they can have somatic symptoms like headaches. I can tell you, domestic violence can cause people to have headache. Stomach pain, constant stomach pain. My stomach is paining me, and you've done everything, check. It's a sign of anxiety. It's a sign of looming depression. Now, there could be struggle, I've said that earlier, with peer relationship. There could be struggle with peer relationship. They are withdrawn. There's a lot going on within them internally. So it makes them withdraw. And even if they don't withdraw absolutely, they have fewer friends. They surround themselves with, they may have like 1 or 2 friends that they confide in, but at times, to the extreme, some of them don't even have friends. They bear it alone because it's been seen as a family issue that they should bear alone. Now, to the teenagers. Well, if it has started right from when they were small, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
Are you here?
I can hear you.
Okay. If it has started, if they started experiencing the domestic violence right from when they were small, it grows up with them into when they become teenagers. Now for the teenagers, depression now sets in full force. A teenager starts becoming depressed, anxiety is there, social withdrawal is there. Some of them go into drinking, smoking as coping mechanisms. They want to be able to cope, just to be able to cope with whatever is going on in their life. They start smoking, they start drinking, they start, engaging in violent acts too. And research has also shown that most children that comes from violent homes that experience domestic violence actually date partners that are violent too. So this thing becomes cyclical. It becomes a cycle. The girls may end up dating boys that are violent.
Sorry. Let me take you back. Are you saying a child who is from a broken home or who have experienced domestic violence? Can you hear me?
Okay.
Are you saying a child who have experienced domestic violence have a way of attracting somebody else also who have experienced the same from a home, and both of them come together in a union?
Very well. They're saying that like attracts like is actually very true. Most children that have experienced domestic violence tend to attract people of like mind. Research has it that 90%, I think is that high, between 80 to 90% of girls that have been abused, whether emotionally, psychologically, sexually, will end up with partners that we abuse them. And the guys too will end up becoming abusers themselves. They pick it unconsciously.
It becomes a cycle that never ends.
It becomes a cycle that never ends.
Funny enough,
when they start having children too, it broadens. Thank you. When they start having children too, they pass it on. The children to pick it unconsciously. There are so many things that we do unconsciously that we don't know we actually picked from our parents. Recently I was doing a kind of self-introspection, and I discovered that I traveled home and my mom is aged, and I was accusing her. She should try and leave things. She has an house help, but she rarely leaves things for the house help to do. So I was like, Mommy, leave this thing. Your house help can watch your clothes. She wants to do her things that are paying herself. You understand? I was accusing her. My husband now pointed to me, but that is what you also do. You understand? And I had to sit down and tell myself that this is actually true. I do this too. Most times when I have out there, I want to do things myself. At the end of the day, I overwhelm myself with a lot of activities, too many activities. I want to do things myself. And immediately I realized that. I told myself, this was actually picked from my mom unconsciously. It's a pattern I picked from her. I didn't even know existed in my life. So when it comes to domestic violence, we pick patterns. We don't even know it is there. The children may not even have the opportunity of manifesting it when they were young. By the time they get married, they discover that they start abusing their spouses. And if you ask them deep down, they will tell them, in fact, most of them had even boasted, they would have told their stories. This was what happened to my mom or to my dad. I can't do that. But the thing is embedded in them. And before you know it, they start manifesting it, because it is a pattern that has been embedded unconsciously in them. And that is why when you notice victims of domestic violence they have to pass through a lot of recovery. They have to recover. Conscious personal recovery. You understand? If it means going for therapy, it's okay. It's okay to do that. It's okay to do that.
Okay, now, honestly, we have gone on, we have said so much. First of all, let's start preferring solution to most of these things, because like what I have seen right now, it's like now we have 20 people who are victims of domestic violence. In the next 20 years, we might have 50, or the cycle keep broadening. So what are we going to do? What can we do to make sure that we are able to contain all of this thing? Because most of our action, it precedes our generation, it affects our generation yet unborn. So what we that are married at the moment, those listening to us right now, what can we do to make sure that we preserve a generation from falling into what we are trying to run away from?
Well, the truth is that self-realization is the first key to recovery. You have to realize something is wrong. If you don't realize something is wrong with you, you can't seek for solutions.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like we said earlier, that it's a cycle. Somebody has to break the cycle. Once the cycle is broken, future generation is saved. But somebody has to be the person to break the cycle. And it all starts with the person, the parents now, that has realized that, okay, this is what I've internalized when I was young. I am actually a victim of domestic violence, and I don't want my children to be victims too. I'm already exercising this on my spouse too, and I want it to end. Then somebody has to start acting. And the person has to pass through, like I said earlier, a recovery process. It is a process. It is a process. It is a recovery process. And how do you help people? Well, I would say for children, the first thing to start doing when you discover that you're already being abusive to your spouse, you have to stop that. You have to seek for help. Seek for help. Identify your triggers. What exactly makes me go mad? What exactly triggers me? I have seen perpetrators of domestic violence. Most of them are not, they don't, in fact, I believe it's a mental health problem. Yes, it is a mental health problem. It's not, people say it's not ordinary. It's not as if it's not ordinary. It's a mental health issue.
It's a mental health issue,
because they are not in their, they are not in their right senses. You imagine a man carry a big stick, hitting it on the wife, somebody you profess to love and to protect all the days of your life, or even hitting a child. You understand? If I love to dwell in the area of children very well, beating, excessive beating, and you think it will correct the child. And when you tell parents, no, this is not done, they will tell you, my father beat me like that. My mother beat me like that, and I did not die.
Most of the time, that is the justification, because I had an encounter with somebody who beat his child. Yes. I don't know how to describe it. Yeah. And I said, look, beating is just to show an disapproval of a child's behavior, not to inflict injury. Yeah. The person started telling me what he or she went through in the hands of this blah blah blah. I said no,
and that they did not die
because you did
and it turned out well.
I said because you did that. Where as you speak at the moment, where are you? Most of your anger right now are from the things that were done to you when you were at his own age. Don't you think you should take a flip and do things differently? Where I ask, the final question I ask him is, when they were doing it to you, did you enjoy it? Did you think your parents were wicked? The same thing. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?